Hello everyone, and welcome to my review of Avowed. In this review, I'm gonna go over the good and bad things about the game, what I felt like I really liked about it, what I didn't like, and why basically. And hopefully this gives you a better informed decision on whether or not you want to get the game for yourself. It is available through Game Pass right now. That's how I played it. And it's also available at full price at $70. So you're probably wondering, like, is this worth $70? What's the fun elements about it? What's the bad stuff? Well, that's what this review is about. We're going to get into. So let's kick things off with the overall presentation of the game and how I feel about that. And that is a good aspect about the game, from its graphics, audio, music, and voice acting. Frames do dip in more open areas and zones, but holds a 60 FPS in small areas like caves, mines, and dungeons as well too that you go into. The writing is mostly good here. I say that because there are some pacing issues, cringe moments, and more often than not, the characters repeat themselves for whatever reason. It'll go back to that character in the same dialogue, and they'll just essentially say they agree with you, but just using different words. It's crazy. I don't know why that was a thing. It became very annoying and frustrating at times when saying it once was sufficient. Let's do this.
Whatever happens to the living lands, at least I can kill Ludwig. I'll take that over nothing.
She better say her goodbyes while she can.
I'm proud to fight at your side, Envoy. One last time.
Let's get to work then. We've got a walking corpse to bury.
Yep.
Parody's militia will be at your back. Give her no quarter. The future waits for you.
Thank
Now
you.
go and teach the Stilgarot a lesson they will never forget.
Show them that the living lands will not be broken across Vodka's knee.
Understood.
May all the gods of Eora and the living lands protect you.
Let's take back the city.
Okay,
Whatever
guys, I
happens
get it.
tomorrow,
I get
The
it.
steel garrote can only make it worse.
Time to stop the Steel Garrote. Lead the way, Envoy.
Dude, why do they keep doing this? Like, they keep doing too much dialogue at times where they essentially say the same thing over and over. It's super weird. Plus, the story is fairly predictable to me, and overall, nothing I have not experienced in other games before. One thing to add on to the writing is the amount of lore that does put into this game. For someone like me who's never played Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, I love finding different lore in this game, from documents I could read to character dialogue that told me more about the world, the various groups and factions, as well as things that happened in the past within this land, like the living lands, the universe, and stuff like that. I didn't find all the lore on the first playthrough to read and go through, but part of the reason for that is it became like so much at times. There was times I was picking up documents with just like long amounts of information that just didn't seem all that interesting to go over and read. I found some of the more like shorter bits of information, like documents, notes, letters, to be more informative often, rather than the long extended text of stuff. And unfortunately, like, the amount of lore that's in here, it's a ton of lore too. It kind of turned me away a bit because I started finding some lore documents that just became uninteresting to read. Like, it was just about maybe, two off-screen characters having a conflict of some kind, and often there wouldn't be a resolution to it. So just kind of like left in the wind. It feels like this type of lore, when it's put in games, is just useless lore. It's just put there just for the sake of it. And I don't like when games do that. But don't get me wrong, having a ton of lore in a game is not a bad thing. It's just all about how you essentially execute it and how you implement it, basically. It's just, I can see having a ton of lore like the way they do it in Avowed can turn some people off from it. But going back to voice acting in Avowed, I do love how Kai's voice actor is Garrus from Mass Effect. Once I knew that, I had to keep Kai in my party for my entire playthrough. He has some great and funny dialogue moments as well. Plus, I enjoyed Kai's companion quests, which helped me understand the character more about his past and what shaped him. Sadly, he was the only one I actually was able to complete because for some reason, the other companion character I got early on, named Marius, his companion quest didn't start to open up till late game, and by that point, I was just ready to finish the game. Then the rest of my companions, the other two, didn't even have any companion quests that popped up for me at all. I'm not entirely sure if this is by design, or like if Marius and Kai are the only ones that have companion quests, or I just didn't do certain things in the main story or even side quest wise to open them up. But either way, it's kind of disappointing as I feel companion quests for all the companions that you get in this game should open up not long after they join your party. That way, it encourages players to want to complete them or at least start on them ASAP, like as early as possible, basically, instead of waiting until late game or just not do them at all. Something I mentioned in my early impressions of video of playing like 4+ hours of the game is about the combat, Avowed's combat being too easy and stuff like that. Well, Avowed's combat remained fun to some extent, but easy and simple throughout my playthrough. My build was a tanky melee character using a shield in one hand and usually an axe or mace in the other hand as my primary loadout, and then dual pistols as my secondary loadout. The truly fun parts of my build was having to be crit damage and poison focused. Now, I did use other stuff sometimes, like I'll use fire elements, I'll throw like bombs, whatever, throw like ice. I did at one point have a weapon that did frost damage, that was pretty cool. But I really love like, status element type damage like poison or dot damage like with fire and doing crit damage. So I was able to make a crit damage build. And poison did work on pretty much every single enemy and boss except for the undead enemies, which makes sense because you're not going to poison undead. They're already dead, you know? What also ends up making this an easy experience, in my opinion, overall, is as long as you do, some to most of the side quests on top of the main story, then you'll get enough experience, you'll get enough gear, you'll get enough resources, materials, weapons, for upgrading. And that way you're always able to handle pretty much any fight that you get into in this game. You really have to try hard to die in this game, in my opinion. I accidentally died a few times, not intentionally. I was just like doing some dumb stuff where wasn't able to, like, the first few times at least, complete this obstacle course of traps that at one part of the game had me do. I just kept getting knocked off basically, but aside from that, I didn't have any deaths in the game. So yeah, it's very, very easy to get through this game without dying. At least not fully dying. Plus, you get a second wind ability that essentially allows you to get back up and have your health restored if you get incapacitated, and it's on a cooldown, I think 30 or 60-second cooldown. So I did get incapacitated, but just never fully died in combat. The final boss itself, to me, lasted way too long though. It was like 4 or 5 phases of basically doing the same strategy against it to beat it. Now, there might be a way not to fight the final boss I did, or even fight a different final boss, or something else entirely that happens. I think it depends on the choices you make during your playthrough. The choices I made led me to the final boss I fought and the 4 phases of fighting it, which was easy. And it was a boss technically I've fought before and defeated earlier in the main story. And so it was just kind of weird in a way of how they did that or presented it and executed it. Ultimately, though, this felt like not good boss design on how you execute how to deal with bosses in the game, because all the bosses to me were easy, not really complicated. Most bosses were just a different variation of regular enemy, just more tanky versions of the regular enemy, and had maybe like one new move or ability, such as shooting a projectile at me, which I could easily avoid or block, basically. Not hard at all. Another thing that was always easy in Avowed is the puzzle solving and exploration with figuring out how to traverse the environment. Some of the environment would feel restrictive and pointless because I'll go exploring thinking I'll, find something or be able to like find a door or hidden door or something like that, and it'd be in the dead end. Or the loot goblin side of me was trying to find, all this loot, and there are parts of the environment that look like there should be loot there, but it's not. Whether it's like off a enemy's corpse or just a random NPC's corpse in the environment, or a box, something like that. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty like chests and stuff like that to find in the environment, and it opens up more, especially after you do the tutorial part of the game. It definitely opens up more, and you can explore the first region and find quite a bit of loot. It's just not a lot of loot in comparison to other RPGs I've played recently and just in general. So a little disappointing when it comes to my loot goblin side. I know that's just probably me. There's other people out there, players that are loot goblin types, and others are just like, nah, I'm cool with not having a ton of loot to find and get in the game. So it's kind of subjective. While Avowed is not as hand-holdy as Dragon Age the Veilguard, for example, it did feel kid-friendly in some aspects, or treats us, the players, like we're dumb and can't figure out more complex like puzzles or other things about the game. And I'm not saying this has to be a Souls game, like level of difficulty when it comes to its combat or puzzle solving or exploration, but I would have, appreciated and liked a more fun, challenging experience overall. This is also subjective as, some people like this type of style of easy experience in an RPG that you get in Avowed. I can see Avowed being this chill game for many people to just jump into and play, which is not a bad thing at all. So it's up to you as the player to decide if you like this style of gameplay or not. For me, with doing all the main story and most of the side quest stuff, it took me 33 hours to 34 hours to beat. So not too bad there. And if you are really trying to speed run it, it'll take less time. If you're just focusing on the main story alone, like I think the average is like 15 to 16 hours if you're just doing main story and not side questing at all. So there's that. Kind of similar, to the Outer Worlds in terms of ultimately for me, I feel Avowed is not a great RPG game, but it is a good game with a ton of lore both newcomers and veterans of Pillars of Eternity universe can enjoy. Some funny dialogue moments, okay to good writing with predictable story, some simple and fun gameplay that allows players to jump in and have fun almost right away. I know the devs were trying to go for a Skyrim-like experience and admitted that they had to scale Avowed down or back, which I'm guessing is due to this game coming out like on time or not delayed anymore and having to just come out and get to the public. I'm guessing this is probably because they were forced to do this, maybe. Who knows? But you definitely can feel it. Like you feel the amount of budget put in the game, the amount of love and effort put in this game, as well as some of the lack thereof. And it felt too easy overall. Played on normal difficulty, mind you. Enemies were very easy, poor enemy variety overall, and bosses were just too easy. And to me, that's like bad game design or just not good game design. This could be a result of maybe the shift behind scenes with development and them having to scale things back, and maybe they couldn't do certain things they wanted to do. I know it has multiple difficulty settings. There's like a hard mode, and there's a Path of the Damned mode, which is the hardest difficulty. But I feel in normal, there should have been like a fun enough challenge there overall. You do feel powerful by the end of the game. You do feel really powerful, which is intended, I believe, by the end game. Like when you get to the final boss, you're feeling pretty much unstoppable. And I did, because I had stuff that gave me buffs as well too. So that I didn't have really much of an issue with there. It's just more just early to mid game was very easy. And I feel like it would be more fun if we maybe as a player could struggle a bit more and have more fun challenging. And then we get that, nice satisfying payoff when we become very powerful towards the end of the game. So yeah. Regardless though, it just sucks. This couldn't be that amazing, big Skyrim-like experience to hold fans of Elder Scrolls and these kind of RPGs over until Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, which is probably still many years away from now. My final verdict for Avowed is a 7 out of 10. So if you still want to get into this game and play it, I do recommend playing it through Game Pass, save you some money, but if you want to buy it, I don't think it's a bad buy either at $70 with the amount of content in the game. Plus, I think most people will have a good time with Avowed. That's all I got for you in this review. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something from it. I would appreciate a like and a subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next video.